This is the GWM Haval H6 Hybrid, a more affordable direct rival to the Honda CR-V Hybrid and Toyota RAV4 Hybrid. So driving the GWM Haval H6 for the first time, I was really surprised with how good actually the car is for the driving experience, especially judging by the way the car looks, because let's be honest, in terms of the way it looks, hindi siya kasing striking or kasing futuristic na mga stuff like from GAC or probably from Geely or Omoda, mga ganyan. The GWM Haval H6 looks a bit nondescript, but take it for a drive though, and you're gonna be pleasantly surprised with how well developed the car feels. So that begins with the hybrid system. It uses a 2-speed gearbox, an interesting setup by the way compared to the ECVT systems of the Toyota hybrid system and the Honda EHEV hybrid system. Combined with the 1.5-liter turbocharged gas engine, maganda yung response niya, especially when you're at low speeds. It's near instantaneous, kind of like the Toyota system, but due to having fixed actual gears, there's, I guess, linearity with the way it delivers its power right off the bat. So we're gonna be coming to a full stop here, and it's worth talking about always na hybrid car yung kanyang brakes, because as usual with the hybrid vehicle, yung kanyang brake system feels a bit spongy yung first 10% apak mo, mostly because of the regen braking, where of course the first 10% apak mo is used to charge the battery, which is not something that's unique to the Haval H6, mind you, because even the other hybrids, like yung mga Toyota hybrids especially, have that spongy feel sa first 10% apak niya. But that's something that you're gonna get eventually used to rin naman as you drive this car for the weeks and months that the car is gonna be with you. Now, while here in the city, what you're gonna notice by the way with the Haval H6 then, apart from the smoothness of transition niya between gas and electric, is that it really tries its best to keep the car in pure electric mode. Kaya even if you're pulling away from a stoplight, it's actually able to stay in pure electric for quite a long time. Kaya one of the results then is the car feels very quiet and very refined. Though yun nga lang, I do find that there's a bit more wind and road noise here in the Haval H6 compared to the Toyota RAV4 and the CR-V Hybrid. Not too bad naman, but there's just a bit more road and wind noise compared to those two cars. But overall, it's still a pretty refined driving experience. Though at higher speeds, it starts to feel like a CVT where it holds the revs and feels a bit rubber bandish yung kanyang power delivery. But out here at low speeds, it feels very linear. And it basically feels like a car that has a traditional automatic at low speeds. For the most part, it's very smooth as mentioned and very instantaneous when you respond. But because you have that actual 2-speed gearbox, there's a tendency minsan where you're gonna overtake. Syempre, it's gonna kick down to the first gear, the first physical gear. I was able to catch transmission holding its first gear at 60 kilometers per hour. And then, it will take a while before the revs drop down as it shifts up to the second gear. It's not unrefined by any means, but compared to the ECVT systems ng Toyota and Honda, it's one of those nuances where the Japanese still feel more refined compared to the one here in the Haval H6. Now, as for the suspension and steering, well, honestly, I didn't really take this car out on twisted roads because I didn't find the car fun to drive. And that's something that you're gonna be noticing right off the bat when you start driving this car, because the steering is just too light for me. Too eerily light, I think. So yeah, I didn't bother bringing this car to twisted roads because that's not what this car is meant to be. Push this car hard in corners and there's a lot of body roll actually. But on the upside, the comfort levels of this car are pretty good. As mentioned kanina, there's a bit more road and wind noise compared to the RAV4 and the CR-V, but again, not too bad. Where I think they need to do a bit of improvement though is the ride quality, because yes, while it's comfortable and not matagtag by any means, I find the RAV4 and the CRV to be more delicate when it comes to the absorption of the small bumps. Here in the H6 kasi, those small bumps do transmit much more to the cabin compared to the Japanese. But drive faster, and as the bumps get bigger, mas maganda naman yung ride absorption niya. Now finally, let's talk about fuel economy, because I'm pretty sure you're expecting na being a hybrid, this will be really good in terms of fuel economy sa city. But actually, if I were being honest, hindi naman siya matakaw sa gas, mind you, but compared to the Toyota and Hondas, where they're easily able to do more than 20 kilometers per liter in the city, this is at best doing just 18.3 kilometers per liter or so. So out here on the highway, the Haval H6 continues its comfortable demeanor in terms of the driving experience. So likewise, at these speeds, the car feels very stable. In terms of the road and wind noise aspect, I do think that there's a bit more road and wind noise here compared to the Honda CR-V and the Toyota RAV4 Hybrid. But it's not too bad. Sakto lang siya for the class and the price point. And yun nga lang, I do think it's worth mentioning that that DHD, that 2-speed gearbox, sort of has its own limitations as well, because since you're basically locked into those two gears, there's an instance minsan na, for example, you're cruising at 60 kilometers per hour, the transmission will downshift, and then it's gonna hold that rev for quite a while before upshifting to the second gear ratio. Wala lang, it's a very interesting quirk of the transmission, but overall, it still feels very refined, very smooth yung kanang DHD. Though you do still feel a bit of shift shock compared to, let's say, the planetary ECVT gear system nung Toyota hybrid system or the 2-clutch ECVT system ng Honda HEV hybrid system. Of course, also worth talking about in a car these days is the full suite of ADAS or the advanced driver assistance systems that the Haval H6 gets. So, yun nga lang, if I were being honest, the lane keeping assist system, not the lane centering, the lane keeping assist, where it will nudge you back to your lane if you're going over the lines and hindi ka nakasignal, I find it a bit too aggressive in this car. Even if you're not actually going over the lanes pa lang, like, ang tendency pa lang is you're a bit off center to your lane, the car will try to nudge you back already dun pa lang sa moment that you're already a bit off center from the lane. So basically, I just kept the alert mode on na lang as opposed to having the intervention part ng kanang lane keeping assist system turned on for the entire drive. But apart from that, other stuff like the full speed adaptive cruise control, the blind spot warning, and all those stuff do work well and are calibrated well, I think, for Philippine market use. So what we have is a GWM Haval H6 Max, so that's quite a mouthful in terms of the name of the car. Beginning with the front end, you're gonna see you have this slim LED headlights up front along with a distinctly designed grille na kind of mimics the grille of the Peugeot 5008 and the 3008. You have 18-inch wheels as opposed to the 19-inch wheels in black, by the way, in the Supreme variant. Here in the side profile naman, you have this gloss black trim here sa kanyang faux vents. Well, this isn't exactly a vent, but it's more of a garnish lang, just an aesthetic purpose here sa kanyang fenders. And then, as you're gonna see, yung kanyang shape isn't actually as radical as some of the newer Chinese cars, like for example, yung GAC M2. Pero, it's a car that still looks pretty good, if not strikingly good. And then, admittedly, moving towards the back, this is where things go a bit south for me. There's a mishmash of badges here which looks a bit off because sa totoo lang, feeling ko yung marketing department ng kotseng ito ay hindi nag-usap-usap kung what font are they gonna use. Anyway, apart from the badge situation sa likod, while it may not be futuristic or very like, you know, sobrang out of this world in terms of the way the car looks, it's actually made up by the fact that this is one of the best driving Chinese cars I've ever experienced. So, yeah, that's a good time for us to move inside the Haval H6 just to see how the car looks like from the inside. Again, doesn't have the concept car like looks of the GAC M2 or something like the Omoda 5, though those are a bit smaller compared to the Haval H6. But fundamentally speaking, the materials, the build quality is actually really good. So you have a lot of soft touch materials here on the dash, even on the doors, by the way. The top and the middle parts of the doors are finished in soft touch materials or lettered surfaces. Even the doors actually sound really good, so yeah, very solid indeed, and that pretty much echoes through the rest of the interior because all of the panels here, even the center console, is really robust and well built. Yun nga lang, I do have two gripes about the interior, and that has to do with two things. So first, let's talk about the gloss black situation across the interior because yeah, there's plenty of gloss black on the high touch surfaces of the vehicle, and this car has only done 15,000 kilometers, and a lot of these gloss black stuff are already scratched up heavily. Especially through the doors here, the gloss black stuff are not exactly the best looking at this point. And then moving on to the control situation, the physical controls or lack thereof actually. These are just shortcut buttons. So if you're gonna change the climate controls, for example, you're gonna be diving into the infotainment system, which isn't exactly good because it's not in a readily available spot. So if you have Apple CarPlay, for example, huwag ka nang umasa that you can change pa your climate controls while you're in Apple CarPlay because it's really inaccessible at that point. And you have to exit Apple CarPlay just to change the climate control settings. Also worth talking about, by the way, is the gear selector here because, for example, ngayon I'm in park, di ba? So yes, 2 clicks it will bring you to drive. Pero, for example, nagkamali ka and na-twirl mo yung kanang gear selector thinking that you're gonna be going to reverse. Sa totoo lang, that becomes a problem because you can twirl the gear selector infinite times. Wala siyang lock basically if you're already in D or if you're already in R. So yeah, it's a possible ergonomic issue I think for some people. So also worth noting, by the way, is that the front seats have seat ventilation, very useful sa ating hot climate, and then power adjustment for the driver but not nga lang for the front passenger. Again, this is the Max, so this isn't actually the top-of-the-line version. And yet, even then, you have this large infotainment system. By the way, in terms of the screen size, mas malaki yung sa Supreme, which is at around 12 inches kung hindi nagkamali. Though the interface is the same pa rin. So I don't think it's a selling point for you to go to the higher trim if you want a bigger infotainment system because, well, that's pretty much it. It doesn't actually change the way that the infotainment system looks. Of course, meron siyang 360-degree camera system along with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. So yeah, I think that's a good time for us to move to the back seats ngayon of the Haval H6. So first and foremost, the Haval H6 competes with the likes of the Toyota RAV4 Hybrid and the Honda CR-V Hybrid. But here in terms of space sa likod, I actually somehow do think that this is the better of the three cars because look at that legroom. It's an insane amount of legroom na pwede pa mag-4 sa totoo lang with a lot of room to spare. Headroom is actually excellent and better pa nga I think than those two because the tendency is yung mga Japanese cars kasi, or at least the RAV4 and the CR-V Hybrid, the rear seats are elevated quite a bit compared to the ones at the front. So in terms of headroom as a result ngayon, it's really good. This is an insane amount of headroom. And then usually with Chinese cars, I would observe their interiors are actually a bit wider than usual. So here in the back of the Haval H6, you can really pretty much fit 3 adults here nang walang problema. So yeah, space is excellent actually here in the back of the H6. And then in terms of amenities, it's actually pretty good as well. You have 2 USB fast charging ports here at the back, your own rear aircon vents then, along with a large panoramic sunroof as mentioned kanina. LED lights by the way here, and the windows, do they go all the way? Yeah, they don't go all the way down. So yeah, it's a really good space here at the back of the Haval H6. It's really spacious, really wide, with a lot of legroom. And that's a good time na ngayon for us to talk about the trunk space of this car because it's actually pretty good din as well.
Actually, more like class-leading pa nga. Because with 600 liters of space, it's actually bigger than both the RAV4 Hybrid and the CR-V Hybrid. The Haval H6 also leads in terms of the value for money proposition. The Haval H6 Max that you're seeing here costs a little under 1.8 million pesos. On the other hand, The range-topping Supreme costs a little over 1.9 million pesos, which gets you nicer wheels, a slightly bigger infotainment screen, but for the most part, you'll already be content with the Max variant. So to sum it all up, the Haval H6 offers one of the best driving experiences out of any Chinese brand. In fact, it's about 90% as good as what the Japanese can offer, but at far more affordable prices.